Yes.
Can you explain how that shipment of high-powered automatic weapons ended up in the drug cartel in Mexico? What took place? They were not supposed to be there.
The federal government decided that they were going to, in Phoenix, we know a lot about, but we also know that they were doing the same sort of fast and furious work in Texas and in New Mexico. Not as much information has become available, but Phoenix involved some 2,000 guns that were specifically allowed to get into the hands of illegal purchasers, and it was done knowingly. The federal government would, at the time of a sale at a dealer's, allow a sale to be made to an unqualified person, somebody with a criminal background, or even if that person were legally able to buy the gun, many times they suspected that that person would be making a resale to an illegal buyer. And there were even occasions where they were able to track the first buyer, and agents at the scene would say, he's now making the transfer to an unqualified person, an illegal sale, can we make an arrest? No, come back to headquarters, was what they were told by the Phoenix headquarters office. And that resulted in some 2,000 guns getting into the hands of criminals. Many of those 2,000 went into Mexico. Some 600 have turned up at the scenes of crimes, many of those being murder victims, people murdered by criminals using the guns that our federal government put into the hands of criminals. Now, from what whistleblowers put into the congressional record, it's very clear that this was being done as a way to generate support for gun control in this country. They were told by the agents, look, this is crazy. This is not law enforcement. This is contrary to everything we were ever taught about law enforcement, because you never intentionally lose control of the chain of evidence. And that's exactly what Fast and Furious was designed to do. They weren't interested in the gun until it would turn up at a crime scene. They had no interest in tracking it and keeping in touch with it, knowing where it was. They didn't care. They just wanted it to get into Mexico preferably, but anywhere it might be used in a crime would be fine with them, because they would trace it back as well to the Fast and Furious. Incredible to me, but they were keeping a list of the guns that they were sending into the criminal world, so that they would have some record of how successful their program had been. It blew up in their face when a Border Patrol agent was killed on December 10 of 2010, and that his murder was carried out by a person using actually a couple guns tied into Fast and Furious, guns that were left at the scene of the crime. Typically, the Mexicans who commit crimes with guns leave the guns at the scene of the crime, because it's a big deal to have the kind of guns that they're using in Mexico. It's a serious crime to have a kind of gun that an American citizen can have as a matter of right, and it's not a problem here in this country. So the Mexican criminal just drops the gun as soon as it's convenient after he's used it in a crime, and that's why they were recovering so many of the Fast and Furious guns at crime scenes, because of this pattern of the criminal element in Mexico, or the Mexicans that were just across our border committing these crimes. So it's led to a congressional investigation. There have been a couple of hearings in the House, one in the Senate, actually 3 in the House, and there are more scheduled, more that are coming, and it has revealed an appalling unconcern about people that are being murdered with these guns. One of the most chilling of the documents that I'm aware of was submitted by whistleblowers about some of the weekly reports that were being given to the then head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And it would report on the murder counts, the body counts in Mexico that had been associated with Fast and Furious guns. And as the body counts would increase, Director Melson would say, good. That's pretty appalling that this lack of concern about the human toll of a government program was characteristic of the people involved in this. And I think it's to the credit, and we need to distinguish who was who. It was people in Washington who were driving this program. It was being opposed by the cops, if you will, the agents on the ground who were arguing that this is perverse. And they were the ones that as soon as they could finally point to a murder committed by somebody using one of these guns, that of Brian Terry at the end of 2010, they went public. And within 6 weeks, they were on CBS's Cheryl Atkinson's investigative reporting. She had a series of interviews with agents on camera and off camera. And that and actually the bloggers that broke it gave their work to us as well. And we were able to take it national. I think we might have been the first to do so at the end of January in 2011. So this has been working for a long time, and information continues to come out. But the outline of Fast and Furious is a government program designed to get people killed. Incredible. Anybody else?
May I ask for a clarification?
Sure.
You're talking about the two bills. I believe you're talking about House number 822 requiring state reciprocity for carrying concealed firearms. Is that one that you were speaking about?
Our preferred bill, and you're probably right about the number because numbers and I don't agree that well, but there's a Senate bill introduced by Senator Thune, which we think it does everything that the bill ought to be doing. And specifically, it has the provision to say that if a state does not have a concealed carry permit system and says that you don't need a permit, and there are 4 of those states, Vermont, Wyoming, Alaska, and Arizona, then the driver's license will be accepted the same as a concealed carry permit. So the Senate bill of Senator Thune is the one that we have been promoting. We were hoping it might have been attached to something right at the end when the Senate was in session. That doesn't seem like that's going to happen this year. So next year, hopefully, we will start again and have something hopefully on another president's desk.
And then did you say that Tim Walz was for or against that bill specifically?
He has not been supporting us on that. No.
He has not. And then the other bill you were talking about, House number 627, allowing loaded guns into national parks?
That became law through amendment by Senator Coburn, who placed it on another measure, and that became law when that other measure was signed into law, so it kind of got a free ride as an amendment.
And then were you saying that Tim Walz supported or were against that legislation?
He wasn't for it on that, with us on that either. And there were repeated votes in the House on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Larry, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Good to be here with you. Sure wish you the best. We hope we'll be working with you next year in Washington.
Thanks, everybody. Let me just say in closing that I am so gratified that someone of Larry's stature and knowledge is willing to come and share some of these insights and describe some of these important issues to us. So Larry, thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. And we're going to be off to Rochester.